Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be looking at the 2022 North Carolina Senate race, and why it is really turning into a hot mess, and just how crazy these primaries for both sides are going to be. So, first of all, just a little background on this race. Obviously, North Carolina is a very important state. It was the narrow state that Trump won in 2020. I think it was the fourth narrowest state overall, as you can see. He only won it by 1.3%, and it was, again, very, very close and contentious, and it was considered a toss-up by many, including myself, really, heading into the election, and it was a very close state that went to Trump by just a couple of votes. As you can see, he only won it by around 60 to 70,000 votes. I'm not going to do the math right now, but a very close state. And also, this is further fueled by the incumbent Republican senator. This is a Republican-held seat. Richard Burr is retiring. If I can get this to highlight, it doesn't want to, but Richard Burr is retiring, which is really good news for the Democrats. Now, Burr was caught in a few scandals, so he might not have been the strongest incumbent, but he was stronger than Thom Tillis, who won re-election in 2020, even not running Donald Trump. And Burr his retirement really clears the field for the Republican primary, or really does not clear the field for the Republican primary. Excuse me, and it's going to be a very a race that's going to be very interesting to watch from the beginning. Now, right now, I think this race is the Republicans are favored here. Could they lose? Absolutely. This is going to be a competitive race through and through. But I just want to say that I'm not saying the Democrats can win as of right now. I think that this is a tilt to lean Republican race at this point in time. Now, taking a look at the Republican primary right here, Mark Walker, who was the former representative from North Carolina's 6th District, will be running for re-election. Now, Walker, as you can see, was the former U.S. representative for North Carolina's 6th District from 2015 to 2021, so he was in Congress until pretty recently, but no, he did not. He did not lose re-election. He was winning on a very gerrymandered map, and then the Supreme Court, I think, forced North Carolina to redraw their congressional lines, and he was like, "Well, I'm not going to be in a Democratic district, so I might as well just not run for re-election and try and get killed." So he retired. He left. He didn't run for re-election, and his Republican, whoever the Republicans ran, got destroyed in that race. So Walker's running. He's a pretty good candidate. I think he's kind of like a Mike Pence in that he doesn't turn off he's actually less known than Mike Pence, which is helpful for him because he doesn't really turn off the Trump base, but he still has that strong evangelical support. And I think that Walker is a pretty solid candidate for the GOP. Nothing wrong with him until maybe a scandal happens or something. But right now, I think he's probably their best candidate. But we do have Pat McCrory, who is the former governor from 2013 to 2017, and unlike Mark Walker, he did run for re-election, and he lost to Roy Cooper on the same ballot as Donald Trump. And McCrory not super well liked by the Trump base. They'll still, he's not like a rhino in their eyes, I don't think, but he's not very well liked by them for whatever reason. They didn't turn out for him in 2016, and he's kind of taken a lot of heat for them. So he's not their best candidate, and especially because he lost in 2016, where the state shifted further to the left since then. And Roy Cooper in 2020, he won re-election by like 4 or 5 he won by 5% against Dan Forest. So he beat McCrory, and since then he's been quite popular in the state. So Pat McCrory, I do think that he would be a pretty bad candidate for the GOP. I think he'd make this race, maybe have a slight Democratic lean. And if he went to the primary, I'm not sure that he'd win the primary. But if McCrory did win the primary, this race could be Democrats' favorite. Now there are some more. Ted Budd is a decent candidate, but I don't think he's going to run. Laura Trump is kind of in the polls for the primary. She's been leading probably mostly because of her last name. She of course is a member of the Trump family. I think she's like Trump's stepdaughter or something. Yeah, she's his not stepdaughter. She is his daughter-in-law, because she's married to Eric Trump. But she's part of that family, and she was the senior advisor to his 2020 presidential campaign. Well, he's the daughter-in-law. Yeah, all right. I should have read that. But, so Laura Trump, because of her last name, she could get the Trump turnout. I don't think she'd get entirely the Trump turnout that we saw in 2020 for multiple reasons, but I think that she certainly has that to her advantage. Then there's Mark Robinson, who's the lieutenant governor of North Carolina. He was just elected in 2021. And there's more that they're being floated. And I'm only going to take a look at one, which is Dan Forest, who ran for governor in 2020. I think he'd be a bad candidate. He's a very right-wing candidate. He's very, very, very right-wing. and he lost to Roy Cooper. He ran behind Trump by 5%. So I don't think he's really their best candidate. So I think that, when you take a look at this primary, especially if Laura Trump is in the race, this race gets very, very competitive. And we should actually take a look at the polls for this race. Here we go. She, in an 8-way contest, which is a lot of candidates for Senate primary, around a third of voters preferred her, a little less. And then McCrory came in second, getting 14%. He has some recognition. And Dan Forest, who ran for governor, came in a close third. And then Mark Walker, who is actually, I think, the best candidate, he finished fifth with only 3%. That's not good news for the GOP. If Walker doesn't get the good primary turnout, and this is just one poll, we're still nearly 2 years out, but if he doesn't get the turnout that he needs in the primary, and the Trumpian part of the party doesn't want to turn out for him in November, he could be in trouble. And when you have a primary that's going to be so divisive, that's bad news for Mark Walker. Right now, I think he'd be a good candidate for them to win this race as of right now, but that could change. And if we have a competitive primary that really divides the party, that's not good. And that could really make him, maybe he'll shift further to the right in an attempt to, kind of grab some Trump voters from 2020 who would otherwise be voting for McCrory or possibly Laura Trump. But, that could hurt him in the suburbs. And as we know, North Carolina is getting more suburban by the minute. So this will be a tough primary. I don't really say that there's a favorite right now. I think, the top tier are probably right now Laura Trump, Pat McCrory, and Mark Walker. I think Dan Forest, if he does run, is up there as well. But right now, not a very good look for the GOP. In these polls, it's been really spread around. We only saw kind of a poll with only 3 people in it from the Public Opinion Strategies that was decently recent that came out that had Pat McCrory leading with nearly half the vote, but then we see these other polls that have Laura Trump winning and Pat McCrory only getting 14, 17, 23%. So the polls right now are not at all credible, but, if it pans out the way that some of these polls are going for the Republican Party, they could be in for a rough ride in the state of North Carolina. But, it's not bad news for the Republicans only, because the Democratic Party, they're going to have a bloodbath primary as well, and we're going to move on to that now. Taking a look at the Democratic primary, so we have Jeff Jackson, who's a state senator. I think he's kind of like Cal Cunningham, that he has suburban appeal. Hopefully for the Democratic Party, he doesn't cheat on his wife, which would be ideal. Ideally when you have a candidate, you kind of hope that they don't have a tendency to cheat on their wife. That's just me. If I'm running for Senate or whatever, I hope that I wouldn't do that, and I hope that if I did, the news of the scandal wouldn't get out. But hopefully for the Democrats, he can not taint his reputation with scandals. But as of right now, he's got a pretty clean record. Of course, we're still a year and a half out. No one knew what Cal Cunningham had done either. But as of right now, I think he's a decent to good candidate. There's also Rhett Newton, who's the mayor of Beaufort, North Carolina. I don't know too much about that. It's kind of a smaller town. So I don't know too much about Rhett Newton, but he could be a decent candidate. We'll have to see. Then there's Erica D. Smith, who actually ran in 2020 for the Senate seat. Erica D. Smith I think she's a bad candidate. In fact, she was so bad that Tom Tillis tried to get her to win that primary so that he could beat her in the November election. Now, Cal Cunningham beat Erica D. Smith in that primary, but the Republicans are going to try to prop her up, which is bad news for the Democratic Party. And if we actually open this link, there are a few reasons why she's a bad candidate. Taking a look at her political career and all that kind of thing. She is very polarizing, and not very well liked by the North Carolinian electorate. And she ran for Senate in 2020, and essentially, like I said, Tillis wanted her to win that primary, but she ended up losing to Cal Cunningham. If I can find, that doesn't want to show me the results, but she lost to Cal Cunningham pretty badly in that primary. But yeah, now for the last thing that we're going to be talking about is Cheri Beasley, who is the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. She's a pretty good candidate. In my opinion, I think she's up there with Jeff Jackson for sure. So again, we're gonna have to see. I think she's gonna run. You know, a month ago she said she announced in April, so we're nearing an announcement. But I think she's gonna run. Actually, I should confirm that. So yeah, she actually lost re-election by only 400 votes in 2020 for her the Supreme Court seat, and now she's gonna run. It looks like she's gonna run for Senate. Um, so again, she outran Biden, she outran Cunningham, she ran behind Cooper, but the Democrats would be lucky to have Cooper march in the Senate race. It's not very likely because he was very popular. But essentially, I think that Beasley, or it's going to come down to Beasley and Jackson. It could be a contentious primary. Uh, these are both pretty fairly average Democrats, and as you can see in the polling, in this one poll, they were tied. Erica D. Smith and Richard Watkins. I don't know too much about Watkins, but I think Smith would do pretty poorly in general election. But there are so many matchups I could come up with. But right now, it's for the Democrats. It looks like it can be a Beasley versus Jackson matchup, and I think Jackson would be narrowly favored there. And then for the Republican Party, looking at their primary, Trump, McCrory, Walker. So I really think that this is a race that's going to be close. I have no idea who's going to win the primaries. General election, I think the Republicans would be favored by a little bit, but I think that's it for today's video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I guess I'll see you all next one. Goodbye.